So let's start with the questions. Let's go back. A lot of the girls listening to this are in that high school age, just beginning to explore what they want to do with their lives and where their purpose lies. Um, when looking at such successful women like you both, I think it's important to hear about where you started and what your life kind of looked like at a young age. So, how did your youth influence you entering the career paths that you're now pursuing? And did family expectations or cultural norms play a role in where you are now?
I think, do you want to take it first, people?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's a big question. I think I'm much older than obviously now high school, and so I've had a lot of time to reflect. And I think I'm going to answer this question different now than I would have if I was your age, because I think when I was your age, I wasn't able to distill it down, but I knew that I enjoyed certain things. And at that time, acting was the most important thing to me. But I also, since I was very little, had a very, very keen sense of justice and fairness. And that really drove so much of everything I did. And I think I loved acting so much because I was able to tell stories that I wanted to. But I was always super involved in government and school and the community. And I volunteered. And there was just so much that I always did since I was very young. And now that I'm older, a lot of the things make sense when I look back at the choices that I made. So what I would say in terms of norms, there was no one that I knew, this is in the 80s when I was growing up, that was doing what I was doing. So it was more, I didn't, and this may sound naive, but I didn't realize that what I looked like and my background would become as much of a talking point until I went to college. And I went to Tisch School of the Arts, and I was so just excited to get in, and I was not prepared for the business side of what I was to expect, because I really grew up in a household that was very merit-based and very much about you do the hard work, you put your head down, and that's the key. And that it's not that simple when it comes to the arts and entertainment and media. And so I had a lot of kind of learning on the job when I started. And so it's nice now that there's been so many generations that have passed, that there's much more of, to your point, a blueprint, or not even, no journey is the same, but at least something, some scaffolding to look at to figure out what may or may not work for you. But it was very much on the job training life for me.
Yeah. That's so interesting, Sheetal, because again, like, we're learning stuff about each other as well, and by virtue of this panel. I think the thing that, again, with retrospect, with many, many years retrospect, I realize is that my parents were very much about the arts, in our household. It was, Bengali singing, and it was Bengali literature, and it was dancing, and it was theater, and it was all these, yes, very culturally located arts practices, but arts practices like endlessly. Like, that was entirely what my childhood was. And then this social justice organization. And so it shouldn't have been any surprise to them, but I don't know, people, if you know this, that my entire high school career was only about theater.
Wow. I didn't.
I was like non-musical theater and drama person. Like, that was all I wanted to do all the time.
Wow.
Like, I did speech and debate.
You can sing. You're a singer.
Yeah. I did it for like the speech part, not the debate part. Like, I didn't do debate. I did speech. I sang, I was in chorus, I acted, I, did musical theater, I did all this stuff, which, and honestly, again, in retrospect, what's been the thing that has most impacted me in all of my career choices and changes? Like, I'm saying without, I would say this in any context, not just because I'm on an arts and literature panel, but high school theater. High school theater was it's the thing that has given me self-confidence to present myself in public. It's a thing I rely on in classrooms when I teach. It's like, it has, like, that arts experience, and particularly theater experience, influenced the rest of my life so deeply. And then came this conversation, and it was a less, like it wasn't the immigrant parent conversation you might expect, which was, we don't have any connections. We're immigrants. We don't have any trust funds. There's no money for you to fall back on. And I'm older than you, Sheetal, so it was the 70s and 80s, right? There was no, like, we were so early in my parents were so early in that immigrant wave, post 1965 wave, it was 1965 wave, that I was kind of the first generation of that, that cohort's children. And there were really no people in any industries, nonetheless, the arts. And I remember my father was like, okay, great theater, okay, great English, but they're like, you need to be able to support yourself, and like, what happens if you can't? And particularly because of this anti-domestic violence organization, there was kind of that, we want you to stand on your own 2 feet, kind of aspect of it as well. And never be dependent on a partner necessarily, but be able to support yourself economically. And so I was good at science. Was I that kid who had always dreamed of being a doctor? I wasn't. I was just good at it. Like, I could do it. I was good at it. I did well. But I ended up choosing to go to medicine, thinking, okay, well, I have the social justice interest here. It is a concrete tool to go into social justice. And like, could I, in an alternate universe, maybe have, just had a career in clinical pediatrics? Maybe. But I think that the passion for the thing that I really wanted to do, which was storytelling in general, and then maybe writing in specific, it's going to burst out, right? And so in a sense, what I hope is that, now that this immigrant community, post 1965, some laws changed, more people came, has been now here, for more generations. I hope that there are just a more plethora of role models and choices. And like, again, I always say, I have a lot of students who I advise, who I'm always like, look, if you're first gen, if, supporting your parents or supporting your family members is really important. Like, there's great honor in making choices that, accomplish that and your dreams. But I just hope that those of you on this call and those of you, you're, this age, don't have to go about their creative practice in such a circuitous way like I did. Like, mine really had to go way around the bend and then come back around.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, and like, that is what it is. It may be who I am. I don't regret anything, but I do wonder what could have happened if my choices had been different.
Mm-hmm. And along with that, I feel like it's also important. Like, I feel like your stories kind of show, like, I feel like at a young age, people think that their paths are pretty linear, and like when you're going to college, what you major in is what you're going to end up doing for the rest of your life, when in reality that doesn't happen very often. And there's just always so much opportunity, a lot more opportunity than we realize at most times. So I think it's really powerful to see how like your early moments kind of shaped your journeys, especially since a lot of us are at that age. And building on that, I want to talk about something that a lot of young people might not always see at first, which is like the hardships that come with pursuing a career in arts and literature, especially as South Asian women. So what have been some of the biggest barriers or challenges that you've faced pursuing in your careers, especially with your cultural identities?
Well, I mean, I think the life of an artist is one that is generally, I mean, taking even the identity piece of it out of it, it is uncertain. There is no job security. There is very much a job to job reality that I think is something everyone just has to know and accept, unless you have a trust fund or somebody, but most people don't. And so I either waitressed or bartended or did whatever hustle I needed on the side to make ends meet for over 15 years. And that's just the reality of the business that I was in. And so, I mean, money, so that's not, it's just a reality, right? Like money, or anybody starting out in a job, that's just something that you have to know. But I think in particular with art, because it is a gig economy, because you're going from place to place, it just has a different nuance to that. But also I will say, along with that, something that I learned later in my life, which I wish I had known earlier, is I often waited around as an actress, especially back, the world has changed a lot in the last 5 to 10 years. But even before that, you know, we always used to joke, like, book a vacation if you want to get an audition. And it was very much that, in the sense of hurry up and wait. It was always Murphy's Law. And so I would see my friends who had more traditional jobs be able to hit these milestones, right? Who would have a relationship, maybe get married, maybe have kids, be able to plan a vacation. And that was a choice, but I was so caught up in turning myself into a pretzel for what the industry needed of me at the time, especially at that time, that I did let a lot of other things that were important to me fall by the wayside. And I would do that certainly different now. I mean, with the hindsight, of course. So I think it's just, but what I can say to you now is I know very clearly that early on, the ones who made it through, including myself, in the sense of who's persisted as long as we have, you have to define success for yourself and not get caught up in whatever the general traditional society thinks or whatever. You have to decide what does matter to you. Where do you want to spend your time? What do you want to make? You know, we're building things, we're telling things, which I love. But what part of that, but I also wanted to be a mom, and I also wanted other parts of my life. And so I really needed to make space for that. And so figuring out that early, in the sense of what drives you, I think can really help shape the path that you're going to be on.
Oh, I love the making success, like defining success for yourself. Yeah, I mean, I didn't waitress. I went to medical school, but
so you had a lot of debt, probably.
that was my hustle. Like I was in residency. I don't know. But kind of the same. Like I was just like, okay, I guess I'm doing this thing, but I really want to do this other thing. And how do I integrate it? Which is why narrative medicine. And then maybe like that's it. Like maybe you can be all sorts of things at the same time. And that took many years to recognize how, in fact, I was just on a podcast earlier today saying this exact thing. I think that the myth of the artist, or I'll speak about writers here, like the writer who goes off to their cottage at 8 in the morning every morning and writes till noon and then has a cocktail and then writes some more or whatever that myth is really gendered, right? All those dudes who were able to do that had wives who were giving them food at the door of their fancy cottage and taking care of their kids quietly, and these aren't immigrants or immigrant kids who are doing these things, right? So very ethnically specific, and has to do with money. I think that it took me years to figure out that to be an artist who's true to yourself and true to your art does involve, as Sheetal just said, defining what that looks like. And for me, it was actually accepting that singular artist, on the mountain life, wasn't actually the way I was going to do it. That it was the multiplicity that was actually adding to my art, that was deepening my ability to tell stories. And, the fact that I, started my career as a novelist later when I was already a mom, but the fact that I was writing in, pickup line at school or whatever, when you call it stuff, and or I would cook and the editing and turn around and work on my computer and turn around and stir things and burn things in the process, whatever. I think that was I think it was the richness of the multifold life that actually made my art what it is. I can't say better or worse, but it is that is where my art comes from. It is from having an academic life and thinking and writing in a certain way during my academic day, and then turning around and being able to do my creative work in a way that balances that out, right? I was just saying on this podcast that, like, if you look at me in the classroom and the way I teach, my syllabi are like super pre-planned and like everything's planned out. And I know like down to like the minute what's happening in my classroom. Like 35 minutes for discussion. And if there's 5 minutes here or there, like then this has to go. Like I'm really planned. But then my writing life is really, I'm a pantser. Like I have a sense of my plot, but I really like allow myself to do messy drafts and like have a more chaotic kind of creative life. And I can accept and recognize and not be embarrassed of that, because that is my process. And I think it's my process because I am a different way in a different part of my life. And so I don't know, like, I just think that like the struggle has been coming to terms with exactly the kind of creative I am, and like recognizing that that's okay. It's okay to be somebody who's had to balance a lot of things, including parenthood, including another job.
It looks like your mic muted for the last couple seconds there, yeah.
I think my hand just ran over the thing. Just, just that like my art is what it is because of the multiplicity is what I'm saying.
And I'll add on to that quickly. I will go ahead and say I do think I'm a better artist because I'm a mom and because I was able to. I mean, the point is you have to live. You have to go out and do things and experience life, and that's only going to feed into your art. And I often would tell people I would say this to anyone who wants to be an actress. I'm like, don't just go see theater, go see visual art, go see fashion, read, like all of the things you need to be is what's going to make you a better artist. And then I'll just say, there's this very, very funny bit on a side note. If anyone knows the comedian Ali Wong, she's very funny and very successful, but there's this very funny bit that she does. Do you know how much more successful I would be if I had a wife? And she goes into the like things, and it's so good. Look it up because it's touching on everything we're saying. But she was talking about in terms of like, I don't know who goes off to a cottage. I've never had that.
Right?
I don't know.
Okay, thank you guys so much for that. I feel like it's so important to hear that even creative careers come with real challenges and moments of uncertainties. In the life we live, there's always some barrier or another. And at the same time, what often defines your creative journey is how someone learns to move through those challenges. So I kind of want to shift the conversation into something a bit more internal now. Many young people feel the pressure to fit into expectations rather than express themselves authentically. And being in the careers you guys have right now, how did you guys discover your personal creative voice, and what helped you gain the confidence in sharing it, would you say?
I mean, time, I think, is one thing that we were both talking about.
I think you do that. Because I think it's always evolving. And I think that you hope that you're growing and evolving. So, a project that I did even a day ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, if I was to look at it again, it wouldn't be the same. I would edit it differently. I would, so I think that it's ever evolving with everything that you're living and experiencing. And I don't think I could, pinpoint what that is, except that I think leading with the truth of whatever it is at that time is really all you can do. And knowing that your singular voice is your singular voice that nobody else has. So I actually think not fitting into anything is the best thing you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just add, fill up your well a lot. Sheetal, you were talking about like go see all the art, read all the things, watch all the things, go to all the theater. Like fill up your well a lot, and then also create a lot. And I think that to the point of the fact that I became a writer, and in high school, yes, I wrote, but I acted more. Like, the theater was. So also I would just say, do all the art, like do all the things, experiment, see where your voice, like see where you start to recognize yourself, and maybe at one stage of your life that is in your high school theater department. Maybe later it's on the page. Maybe it's through singing, maybe it's through something. See, because all of these are ways, I really feel like art is a way where we are introduced to ourselves, right?
Mm.
In a sense, you don't know yourself until you start to write it. Like fiction has helped me like hold up a mirror and really see myself more and more, right? So we write in order to like figure out who we are. And then the next step is then we share it to other people so that they can then insert themselves and figure out who they are, right? In the process, in that dialogue between the art and the viewer, right? Or the reader. So I would say like ingest, like take in all the art, experiment with all the art, like dabble with all the art. And, do that improv thing where you say yes to scary chances that come along, no matter how old you, like, chances came along in my life at stages where others were telling me like, well, you're just going to go start again, start over afresh. Like you've invested all these years in XYZ. Why would you do that? Like, why would you be a student again? Why would you be a newbie again? And in a sense, like you have to give yourself permission to keep learning and keep growing and keep being a newbie again at something, no matter what stage of your life, and say yes if that really is the thing you want to do, and not be held back by like, oh, but I've already headed down this path. Well, so what? Like this is also your one life, right? And you want to be proud of yourself. You want to do things you're proud of. So you want to say yes to things that you'll be proud of. And hopefully you also want to like not have regrets, and just do things that you're both proud of and you're like tickled by. You're like, oh, I did that thing. Like, good for me. I was brave enough. I took that chance. I did that thing.
Yeah.
And whether or not that's success, like a bestseller or, an award, like that's success. Like you took those chances, man. Like you did that thing.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And going off of that kind of, you talked about how like just like taking risks is like a part of that, finding your creative voice. In your lives right now, what kind of inspires you to continue taking risks and like continue creating whatever way that looks for you, whether it's books or making new projects? What kind of pushes you in your career right now?
Well, I think the world being what it is, I think it's more important than ever. I mean, it's just, at least for me, when I feel completely overwhelmed and uninspired, which is often with the leadership and the choices that are being made in, our name, I channel that into the work. And honestly, I'm inspired by the young people who are doing far more than I think adults are, and set a far greater example and are refusing to accept the world as it is. I mean, your whole generation, Sarah, is amazing. And I am just completely blown away and wish that you guys were in charge because I think it'd be a different world, but I channel it really into the work.
Wonderful, yeah.
Yeah, I would say absolutely the same. Absolutely the same. And like to Sheetal's point, I think also like being an artist is also always being willing to learn from all different teachers and recognizing that teachers come in all different forms, and like they will come throughout your life, and they won't just be people who are chronologically older than you. Like being willing to learn from like the little kid, from like the teenager, that like, and recognizing that you're going to kind of be in like a cyclical, like teaching each other sort of relationship with people your whole life, no matter how old you are. And I think that's really exciting about art. That's really beautiful about art, is that we can keep continuing to learn and grow in those ways. And like, yeah, I would say exactly the same as Sheetal. Like when I feel frustrated, that I look to like my colleagues who are making these beautiful stories and writing this, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute. There's like such beauty and such insight and such passionate people. And the great thing about being an artist is that you also get to be in community with these people. Like I'm friends with Sheetal because we're both writers, right? That's how we met. And you get to be influenced in community with other people who are similarly like taking risks and putting themselves out in the world and trying to change the world through story. And that's really like, yes, the artist life is solitary in the way that you have to dig into yourself, but it's very communal in the way that you get to, live with other artists and work together and be inspired by them.
Mm-hmm. That's so beautiful. I feel like that's like I said before, our theater program is really strong, and I feel like something that is very cool to see is to see how like community between all different kinds of arts, it's kind of what brings a lot of people together, which I think is really beautiful. And for our final question kind of here, I want to bring this back to the audience, and this is also being recorded, so if anyone is watching this in the future, many of whom are probably in that stage of exploring what they might want to pursue. If a South Asian girl is watching this today who loves writing, storytelling, acting, or any other creative field, but isn't sure whether they should pursue it, what would you kind of say to them, and what kind of advice would you give to them?
I mean, I would ask why they feel like they can't. I'd want to get to the bottom of it. I think there's so many reasons why people think they can't. If it's because they don't know if they're good at it or if they can make a life out of it, then I would say you have to try, because you don't want that to be the thing that's, waiting. But if there's other things going on that I don't know about, it's another story. But ultimately, I'm always going to say, you got to, like, you don't half-ass it though. You kind of have to go all in and really get in there and be willing to roll up your sleeves, get your feet dirty, and do the things. And what I will say, the thing that is different now, it is so democratized. Art is extremely accessible to everybody in all the ways, and you can make your own. There's no excuse to not make your own whatever art at any time. Nobody needs to give you permission, money, resources to do that. There is so much available now that was not when I was growing up, just by the internet alone and all the tools and YouTube and whatever, it is that you're trying to do that you can put out there. So I say start that and have your ownership and that thinking as early as possible.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah.
And I would just say, like, be in community with other South Asian creatives of color in general, because, racism is real, right? It's not real, right? Sheetal was talking about it, suddenly confronting it right at Fish. When I first tried to publish The Serpent's Secret, which is my first book, it was right before We Need Diverse Books came out, which is a very important organization that really opened the door for a lot of people of color and LGBTQ folks and people with other socially marginalized identities to find their way in publishing. But they came out, that group really started coming to the fore in like 2014, 2015. It was probably around then or right before then that I was trying to get published. And I remember they were just like, an adventure with a brown girl, but why? Like, can't you write a sad story with her and her conflicts with her parents? Like, whatever. Like, they wanted one specific kind of story, the gatekeepers that I was meeting. And again, because she was one of the gatekeepers. Or they would say, like, oh, but we already have one brown story, or like whatever it is. So like those are all real. But the reason I brought up We Need Diverse Books is that if we were all just out there individually trying to fight these fights, maybe it would, take longer and come out differently. But like then people got together in community, in an organization, and were able to successfully actually, at least at the time, open a lot of doors in publishing and kind of change the face of who was getting published. So I would say both, like, racism is real and those kinds of forces are real. That said, community and the strength of community is also really real. And so, I think really from an art perspective, the more specific you are to your experience, the more universal your story is. And so my first stories were based on Bengali folktales, but very like Percy Jackson read-alikes, adventures set in America with lots of like humor and and kind of sass in them. There was lots of Bengali words in there that I didn't translate, that I didn't italicize. And those books were still really popular among all sorts of kids, South Asian kids and non-South Asian kids. The more specific you are, the more universal your story is.
Yes.
And I would just say lean into community and open, and if you end up coming through the door and having a seat at the table, keep the door open behind you, right? Make another seat at the table, make a different table, help other creatives who are coming up behind you, help them find their way in as well.
Thank you guys both so much. I feel like a lot of what we talked about are so applicable to beyond even arts and literature, just to people that are students that are looking to pursue something in the future and just enter the workforce in general. A lot of what you said really connects back to a lot of the main questions I think a lot of people my age are kind of struggling right now. So I would like to open it up to questions. If anybody here has any thoughts or questions they'd like to ask, you could raise your hand. Nehal, what question would you have today?
How do you handle feedback, especially when it's critical or conflicting as an artist, or even if it's in general?
Even if what? You don't like part?
Even in general, in daily life.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in and say it's part of it. There's no, you're going to have to, if you're sensitive to feedback, this is not the job for you, because you're going to have to take it. It's, I think, to your point, discerning between what's helpful and what isn't. And so, I mean, as an actress, you're going to be told no more than you get told yes. So you just have to have a thick skin. And I have met people that have been I don't have it and I can't handle the rejection. I'm like, this job is not for you. Maybe there's something else in the space that's more suited, right? That is something. When it comes to writing, I often do get conflicting notes at times. And so I think ultimately for me, it's really tapping into really just being quiet with myself and being okay, what is the note behind the note? Because often there's something that ties some of the notes together that may not have been expressed in a certain way. Ask questions. It's always okay to ask questions and follow up with what they're saying. And then ultimately you have to make what you want to make, and it has to be reflective of your voice. So ultimately I always say I want to be able to stand by my work. And if I'm not proud of it, I don't want to put my name on it. So there's certain things you fight for, and there's certain things you're oh, I don't even care about that. It's fine, whatever. Pick your battles if there are some to be had.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is that, and sometimes the thing that there are certain things that are absolutely I won't budge on because that's my voice and that's what I'm standing by. And then there are other things that maybe on first glance I was a little resistant to, and then I actually grow from it. I'm oh, in my head it makes sense, but on the page it's actually not translated. It's not coming across the way I want. And so there are also opportunities if it's somebody you trust,
right,
and somebody you have that relationship with. There are opportunities to grow, ultimately.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Shruti, do you have a question?
Yes, and I wanted to ask, I know that a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions and they show hesitation when it comes to pursuing a career in arts and literature. And I wanted to ask, what do you think is the biggest misconception people have about pursuing a career in writing, acting, or the arts? And where do you think that perception comes from?
I would say that I think people think it's really glamorous, and I think that's because of the social media of it all and seeing the highlight reel and people, and we all have some version of this, right? But really the red carpets and the bestseller of it all, which has never happened to me, but it's happened to Sayantani, but that is 2% of our lives, getting dressed up and being able to do those fun things, which I think you should do. I think our lives there's so much where you're just working. So I think celebrating is really important and you should do that. But I think that the social media of it all has made it seem like that's what it is. It's so not. And so I'm often like, if you think it's all that, that's in my mind, like if that's your goal, there's probably something else that you could put your time into, but that certainly is not what drives me. And it's not my everyday by any means.
Yeah, you have to love the work for sure.
Yeah.
You have to love the thing, like the messiest, hardest part of the work. And when you're in that, when you're like, this story makes no sense, you're even in those moments, you're like, but I wouldn't trade it. Right? So you have to love it through all those hard parts and not be in it. Like the celebration is great, but that's extra. That's like cherry on the top, for sure. And then I think, the points we made about money are real. Like that's something to consider for sure. And so a lot of fellow writers or maybe debut writers who are asking me like, hey, I sold my one book. Should I quit my day job yet? I'm often like the annoying person who's like, maybe not yet, especially in this country where like our health insurance is tied into our jobs and whatever. I'm like, just because like the money in publishing comes in like little tiny fractions. And so you may sell a book for a lot of money, but you're only going to see a fourth of it when you sign, and then another fourth of it and then another, right? And so it's going to dibble dabble over time. So that's kind of another reality, just to be aware of.
Thank you.
And if that is all the questions, that will be it for tonight. Thank you both so much again for coming here and speaking. And thank you for the people that came and attended. I hope that everybody kind of was able to gain a new perspective and hear these incredible stories. So thank you guys again one more time.
It was good questions, guys. They're really, really thoughtful.
Yeah, thank you for having us. And actually, do you mind, Sarah, if I just ask, like maybe people can just shout out some South Asian creatives or like something, Sheetal, that you think we should all go see or like read or if any of you all have, right, South Asian like creative things that you're like, oh, go watch that thing, go do that thing.
One that I think I may have talked about this in one of your interviews, but for me, I think The Namesake and Jhumpa Lahiri's writing is definitely something for me that really got me into reading a lot of South Asian female literature for sure.
I'll mention one movie that came out last year and it was shortlisted for the Oscar. It was called Homebound, and it is one of the most, I just think it's on Netflix, and it's one of the best movies I have seen in a really long time. So I recommend that highly. And then, this is not new information, but I really loved Kiran Desai's The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny. I mean, it is a beast of a book, and I get now why it took her 20 years to write it, but it was so good. I'm also a big fan of Arundhati Roy, and her latest book is gut-wrenching and amazing.
The one about her mom, Mother Mary.
The one about her mom. Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of hers. I went and heard her speak at BAM. And then he is not South Asian, but I think anything that Ta-Nehisi Coates writes is really wonderful. The Message was his last book, and I just recommend it, especially for people who are thinking about telling stories. It's a great book that talks about who gets to tell the story, what's the story that's being, it really frames things in a really interesting way that I think you guys would really benefit from reading.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then I would say just in terms of the YA space, Soman Chainani has a new book out about a teenager who becomes president. So I just have been reading that. Saba Tahir's Air is also on my nightstand. And in terms of, and I'm just so, Sheetal, this is your space, not mine, but I'm so tickled by like the Delhi Boys or like some of the, or like I saw Riz Ahmed's
8.
Yes, it was so great. And I'm waiting to see, I haven't seen his Hamlet yet. And so I'm just like, okay, it's far too few, not enough yet. But boy, are there some genius like South Asian art makers out there, and it's so fun to see them.
Yeah, there's some really good stuff that's happening. And don't forget, Sayantani had a book that just come out, The Theft of the Ruby Lotus. My whole family is reading it right now. We're all trading turns. Should have just bought more books, but
you guys have different bookmarks, you said.
Well, we have different bookmarks. We do. We have like the bookmarks with their name, and my kids, it's the end of the school year, so they just have like so much going on. But we're going to be
I
able
love
to
it. And
finish it now.
Sheetal, do you have a new Anjali book out? You
I
do,
don't.
right?
My Anjali Can came out this past year, but there's more to come. So more TBD on all those, and I have a film coming out as well. So stay tuned.
Oh, amazing! Can you say the name or no?
It's called Hummingbird, and we're finishing it, so it'll hit the festival market hopefully at the beginning of next year is the plan.
Oh, amazing! Can't wait to see.
Yes, me too.
Sorry, Sarah, to like hijack the.
No.
I just wanted to like hear.
Tell us what you guys. What are you watching right now, guys? What are you watching? What are you reading? Tell us.
I'm watching, I'm like rewatching Never Have I Ever, and like I know like Maitri Ramakrishnan, and I think like the producer is like Mindy Kaling, and I think that like the show like really represents and like it shows like young South Asian girls and women, like it allows them to like see like their cultures and like experiences and like their high school experience, like how it could be different and like represented on the TV screen.
Cool. What else?
This isn't reading or watching, but it's more of a artist. But Cat's Eye is like this global girls group, but they have Laura Raj, who is Indian, and her family's Indian, and her sister's also in music. And I think she really just represents, something that's not a traditional, quote unquote model minority path.
Yeah.
And I really admire that. So I'm going to go watch her live on Friday. So I'm really excited about that.
And I will say I have met them both. I know Lara and Rhea, and we're not like friends, but I've been in this. We've met at multiple events, and they couldn't be nicer. And my daughter also loves Cat's Eye, and they're just really. I was at an event where I've met them multiple times at once when they were both there and their parents were there, and it was just a lot of just love and gushing, and they couldn't be sweeter. So
that's beautiful. I'm so glad.
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I love Laura Raj. I feel like it's just so nice to see like Indian role model that's relatable and kind of like in our generation, but has taken such a different role than you would see like represented right now. Yeah,
definitely very proud of who she is and has no problem. I mean, it's such a different time than when I was growing up, and it's so refreshing to see how she is unapologetically herself, and she loves it, and it's beautiful. I just told her, please stay together, and she's I'm hoping to.
Well, if nobody else has anything else to say, that'll be it for tonight. Thank you again, guys, for coming, and I hope you guys all have a great night.
Thanks,
for
guys.
having us. Bye.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye.